cameras running. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another video. Today I just want to show you briefly how I made the game for Brackeys Game Jam 2021. I think it was quite successful. I used like 4 days of my time and could only work on it in the evening, as I'm also running a full-time job, which is okay, and I think for everybody it's okay to just do what you can in the available time. And today I just want to show a couple of tricks which I use to make this game, let's say, visually appealing. And I'm just going to run you through, let's say, the project files of Unity and show you the basic concept of the game. So let's get right into it and see you again at the end of the video. So first of all, let's look a little bit to the design of the game. What I did in this game, I used very simple shapes. So I only used like these squares, and you can just shape them in any way you would like. And I chose to have a dark color. So for the player, there's almost black, this very dark blue. And in the background, I had a lighter blue. And in general, the camera, let's say the camera, where's the camera? There also has a dark background. And then if you look in the game, everything is a little bit dark. And what I did in this game, instead of using my parallax script, I used a different camera, which is a perspective camera. And in the perspective camera, let's say the background creates a parallax effect by itself. If I shortly demonstrate this. So, and if you can see it now a little bit, you can see that the background here has a kind of a parallax effect, and it's actually very simple to create with this setup. As what you have to do is just put these, let's say, the background layers on the z-axis just behind, and this in this case the camera is at -11, I believe, camera. So, and it's a perspective view, so based on the camera position you have to position, let's say, your objects, and in this case a more positive higher figure means that it's further away in the background. So that's a basic technique to create a parallax effect with the perspective camera. I think it's actually quite good. You could of course put much more objects in the background on different, let's say, positions, and that way you can really create a feel of depth in your game. What I did further, I just get some small assets like some wrenches, which I just put on random, and let's say the main features are these gears, which I just made to turn. And so I had them in the background, and of course the hazardous one I made in dark red, which makes them stand out, as well as, let's say, the checkpoints, which I just made a clear white, also to make them stand out. But what I also added was a mist effect. So I added a shader, and when I turn it on, you have this red cloud, and this shader was it's pretty much this fog shader. Oh, this fog shader, which I created, and I just followed a small tutorial on that on YouTube. And it was very effective, super easy to make. And I know these shader graphs, they always are quite intimidating at the beginning, but it's pretty much the same like Playmaker. So try this out. And the moment you have, like, say, one shader for, let's say, this fog, then you can very flexibly change the color of it, change the amount of let me just zoom out here. The mist is there, and if I change these figures here, so then the mist moves faster. I can even make it even more faster. I can say now I have a lot of clouds around 100. If I make here 500, then you have a lot of smaller ones. If I make here 5, then you get an overall, let's say, fog feel throughout the whole level, which is pretty cool. And this, I made sure that this is only, let's say, on the background. So the background has a changing, let's say, feel to these background pillars or whatever they are in this factory. And that's a very simple way to let's say, change this. In regard to the play controller, I pretty much use Playmaker. And what I did is, from the tutorials, which you can also find on my channel, I pretty much used the character there, which has all these different abilities, double jump, etc. But I only picked a couple ones and turned off the other ones, and I replaced, let's say, the main player with a different character, where I chose the stride of this little robot, and I just had to update the animator with very simple animations, just an idle, a walk, and a jump. And they were just controlled again by Playmaker. Now, what I did was in each level, I made sure that the, let's say, the speed of the robot is based on a global variable. And the idea of the game was that every time you find one of your friends, I mean, you're stronger together, that you get stronger. And how I did that was then, there's, I think, the start stats, yes. The start stats would just look, I mean, it would set your basic stats, at least in this level, which is 2.5 for the speed, and where I also got the comment that I should probably put it a little bit higher. But wait, I think I should go to level 3. Let me not save this one. And then go to the start stats. There it is. Yeah, exactly. And it was just an easy in switch. So depending on how many robots I found, this would, let's say, then enable either, let's say, a higher stat or a lower stat. That's how I pretty much did it. And in total, you could find 7 robots, 7 of your little friends, if I remember correctly. And based on that, I would set then the speed and the jump force of the character. Another thing which I also added to the player, because I realized that at some point you jump too high, is that I added a small FSM here, and sorry I didn't name it. And in the moment if you press the vertical button downwards, get button down, vertical, and what I did in the settings, I removed the up button, so you can only go down. I just add a force downwards. That way you could easily control the player by going up and down, so you don't jump too high. Good, there was the player controller, environment and hazards. So what I did here, which was pretty cool, I made a checkpoint system, and let me just click here, checkpoint, and I pretty much also here just used different bars, and then I added some of those, yeah, these are gears, in Dutch you say tandwiel. And the moment you trigger it, then the particle system, or let's say the particle system stops by default. And the moment you trigger it, I set the position of the player, or check for a checkpoint of the player, and I may play a sound, and I start rotating these gears, so in the right direction. So at the start they don't rotate, and the moment I trigger them, they just start to do this rotation. So I believe the beginning they have exactly no rotation and no particle effects, and once I hit it, then you get this effect, and you really get the feeling like, ah, okay, you triggered something. And I added a simple particle effect as well, and I used the same particle system also for, let's say, the enemy gears here. See, I just make it red, so I reused a lot of these particle systems throughout the game. So that's pretty much very the basic idea of how I made this. And remember that I pretty much made these levels just by simple shapes. I don't really like to use, let's say, grids or these kind of prefabs, because this way you can really be creative with your level. Of course, it's more work, that I have to say, but if you use simple shapes like these, you can easily go around it. So I already explained the checkpoint system, and then of course I had these dangerous gears turning around, and if you fall into them, you are pretty much being destroyed. So basically I added rotation FSM, and then I had a kill FSM, and then on trigger I pretty much set the velocity of the player to 0, and there was a reason for that, because I didn't want the camera to go all the way. And I just turn off the sprite of the player, which then it makes it look like as if it's gone. And I also, let's say, turn off all his, let's say, controllers, so it cannot control. And I wait 5 seconds. I also got comments that I shouldn't wait 5 seconds, but I wanted to kind of give you the feeling like, oh, it really is destroyed. And one thing which is pretty fun, I added a exploding body. And what I did was, so this is also the player, as you can see here. And let me just duplicate it a couple of times perhaps. There, there. And this exploding body is actually has all the different body parts in it, and they all have a rigid body as well, and a small polygon collider. And what I did, I attached to the body, I added a circle collider, which is a trigger with a point effector with some force. So the moment, let's say, the character is destroyed, he fades out to 0, and I spawn one of these bodies, and they pretty much explode, and they just stay there, which is pretty cool. Of course, after a while, I also, after it explodes, I immediately, let's say, cancel the point effector, because otherwise the player would come near the body and will also jump around. But what I also did, of course, is to this whole body, after 30 seconds, I destroy it. So otherwise there are too many rigid bodies into the game, and then you get into trouble. So you can see here are the body parts, and also when I fall here, that's the desired effect. And then after 5 seconds, you respawn and you have all the body parts lying around, which was pretty cool, in my opinion. Huh? So that's an easy way to give a more, let's say, dramatic effect to the player's death. And one thing which is pretty cool, I think, is that I made this conveyor belt. And in the conveyor belt there is, let's say, a spawner. There it is. And it spawns body parts, which fall then on top of this conveyor belt. And this conveyor belt has a service effector. And I just made sure that the service effector affects these body parts, and then they all fall down here, and of course after a while they disappear, which is also just for the environment. I think it's quite cool, and let's have a short look at that. So once I go here, so you can see here the body parts falling, which I can also interact with if I walk against it and they block my way. And also the player is kind of moving in this direction, and this gives you, let's say, additional difficulty. On this conveyor belt, it's not blocking your way so much yet, but on the next one there's these lasers which make it then of course much more difficult. Another thing which I did in regard to the game design, I offered more routes to the player. In the end, the idea was to save as many robots of your Robo friends as you could, and if you unlocked, let's say, a certain jump high, you could access other routes, even though this route was quite easy to achieve, but I think most people went here anyway. And what I also did was, like, I made hidden doors. So in this one, there's an FSM. The moment it hits it, then I make a curve color. I curve the color and I set the color so that it's then faded out and faded in. So that's an easy technique to use. Yeah, if you want more details, just let me know. It's an easy FSM and it works, even though I use the set property function, which is our action, which is never really the best action to go around. And by doing so, but I have here, for example, a hidden passageway, which has, of course, a lot of hazards and lasers, but it gave, let's say, the option to roam around the map a little bit more, which is pretty cool. Then in regard to the sound, and let me show you shortly how I did this. So I used a general music in the background, and sorry that my project is not really sorted. This is a typical game jam project. So what I did, I just had one music source, which has this kind of a little bit more dark music, which I pretty much got from the YouTube library. This one just repeats itself, plays on awake, and it loops. And this one is a 2D sound, which is okay. But I also have this factory sound. Let me check, where is this one? That's it. There's a lot of, let's say, factory. And the factory art is, let's say, these gears rolling around. And what I did here is, and let me turn on the gizmos. I just made sure that this is a 3D sound. And only as long as you're in this area you can hear this sound. So this is quite a good trick to learn on how to put sounds in different locations. So at the beginning you only hear the music. The moment I get near to the gears, you will hear the gears, and you hear this kind of factory sounds of iron bars hitting each other, etc., which is pretty nice. And that's pretty much how I made the whole environment or the atmosphere of this game. And also in regard to sounds, what I did, I put a small script on the player, and I added here these add events for the footsteps. And I had a walk sound script, which is very simple. I just put here the step robot sound, and then I put a audio source, which is then here. There it is. And what I did then with the audio source is that I changed the pitch, set audio pitch, and I change it every, let's say, 0.2 seconds. I changed the pitch, and then the stepping sound is pretty much changed. So if I just let me just demonstrate that shortly, and let me just turn off the music so we can focus on this topic very shortly. So here's the character. And as you can hear, it's not the same sound every time. It changes every time. And for the jump, I pretty much also did the same. I changed the pitch over time. So in the final map, I had this kind of boss battle, which is quite easy. I had this super wheel set up, and the moment you enter this trigger, it starts, let's say, exciting music. It waits 5 seconds, and then I just move slowly with a speed of 2. I move all these gears, which pretty much hit you in any sense. Even if you stay there, it will hit you, so you can't escape it. And it will slowly move to this target over here. And the idea is you have to jump all the way up before it hits you, and then, let's say, reach the light. And the moment I reach the light, it's pretty cool. I try to make then this outside level here, where I don't use a mist. I just use, let's say, what is that? Vin, this global volume. Of course, I also used a global volume in the other levels, by the way, to also make a dark circle with a vignette. And I only use a vignette in this one. I didn't use any bloom or lightning effects. And what is fun, in the end, I put in all the robots which you saved, and it pretty much checks which robots you had or not. And based on how many robots you saved, I added then different texts here. So there's a different text. So if you save less than half of your Robo friends, it's quite sad, the ending. There's different music as well, which I play. And I even make the player explode, which is quite harsh, because I think most people, the first time they play it through, they will only reach that. But if you save more than half of your Robo friends, then you have a more fun music, and also the robots start dancing while they just start moving from right to left. And this was quite a good end scene. And then let me go to the final creme de la creme, which was the opening scene. I spent a lot of time on this one. I started actually the development of this game by just making this opening scene. Let's have a short look at it. So as you can see, I use here particle effects which grow over time, and I use the time scale effect. And then I make, let's say, this thunder and lightning sound. So I have a lot of effects here. There's this event, and it's all controlled by this very simple FSM, where I fade the audio. I make a curve float, which is the time scale. So I make the time start very slowly at 0.2, and I slowly go to 0.7. And the moment I then hit this trigger, I change then, of course, all this animator back. I rotate the character in the right way. I add an explosion. I make some sounds. And then I fade the camera out. I first wanted to animate the player that it, let's say, gets together or stands up, but I didn't have the time, so I just fade out the screen, fade it back in. At the moment it fades back in, the player is all ready to go. and he gets his basic stats here of the robot speed and the jump speed, and then he's allowed to walk. That was pretty much, let's say, the scene at the beginning, and the second cutscene, or the first cutscene, and then in the final map I have the last cutscene. And with the final result, I just made a very simple trailer, which has this opening scene with all the thunder and everything. And I just cut in a couple of scenes, me jumping around. And voila, you have a Game Jam game in a couple of days.
So that's pretty much it. I hope the video helped you. If you liked it, feel free to subscribe. I would appreciate it, or just like the video. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments or join the Discord channel, and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers!